This is my TNA Against All Odds 2010 pay-per-view review. The pay-per-view aired last night live exclusively on pay-per-view. What I gotta say about this TNA pay-per-view is this pay-per-view was nothing more than one of those TNA throwaway pay-per-views, or at best a TNA, average pay-per-view, an average TNA pay-per-view. Nothing really spectacular on this pay-per-view, which most people I don't think were expecting much from this pay-per-view. And I think the one thing that kind of hurt this pay-per-view was the main things that hurt this pay-per-view were obviously the tournament could have been booked better, but I would say the main things that you saw wrong with this pay-per-view were almost all the matches other than the opening match. You either saw end in endings that came out of nowhere or a poorly booked ending. Those are the ways that every single match other than one match on this pay-per-view ended in. Now, overall, I'm giving this pay-per-view a 6 out of 10 like you see in my description. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking that might be a little too generous for this pay-per-view. Now, the main reason why I'll explain why I'm giving this pay-per-view a 6 out of 10 is because I did enjoy the world title match. I enjoyed the opening quarterfinals match with Desmond Wolfe versus the Pope DAngelo Dinero, and the outcome with the Pope DAngelo Dinero winning the 8-card stud tournament was good enough to kind of help this pay-per-view. You at least saw some things come out of this pay-per-view. So you're going to see the Pope DAngelo Dinero take on AJ Styles, the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view, which should be a great match between those two at TNA Lockdown. Like I said, the opening match was good, and the world title match on this pay-per-view was good, even with Eric Bischoff's involvement. Didn't hurt the quality of the match at all. I thought them two still put on a hell of a world title match. Them two put on better matches before in the past, but I thought it was still a very good world title match. The opening matchup was, well, actually, before I get into the overall review of this pay-per-view, a lot of you know that today TNA is making a major announcement about probably, by the time you see this video, probably less than an hour, they'll be making the announcement. And the major announcement at this time is rumored that TNA is going to be moving to Monday nights. And if that's the major announcement that TNA is moving to Monday nights, I'll give my thoughts on that tomorrow, because don't want to upload two separate videos today. One, give my thoughts on the TNA pay-per-view, and whatever the TNA major announcement is going to be, I'll give my thoughts on tomorrow, because I just don't want to upload two separate videos in one day, since if I do that, most people are either going to miss one of them. So let me just give my thoughts on that tomorrow, as far as whatever TNA's major announcement is, which most likely is already predictable what it's going to be, them announcing they're going to move to TNA Impact to Monday night. Now, this pay-per-view Against All Odds started off with Desmond Wolfe versus the Pope DAngelo Dinero in a quarterfinals match in the 8-card stud tournament. This was really the only 8-card stud tournament match that was actually good. Every other match either was not that good quality-wise, or either had poorly booked ending or endings out of nowhere. This match was actually booked pretty good, I thought. Good back-and-forth action. Crowd was really into the Pope DAngelo Dinero. The crowd is really into him. Glad that TNA's actually pushing someone, noticing that the fans are really behind them, are actually for a change, actually listening to the fans, which really shocks me. They actually are. Good opening match here. Good back-and-forth action with Pope DAngelo Dinero and Desmond Wolfe. Good counters in this match. Really enjoyable. Wasn't given much time, but since it was a first-round match, and whoever, advances have to wrestle, another time, one or two more times in the night, it's understandable them not giving it too much time, since they got 9 matches on this pay-per-view. Most of the first-round matches probably got in the range of 10 minutes at best, or about 8 minutes at best. This was about 8 to 10 minutes. Really good stuff. Good opener. Really enjoyed it. Pope DAngelo Dinero advances in the quarterfinals after hitting the DAngelo Dinero Express to Desmond Wolfe in a 3-star match. Really solid, really good, solid opener. Then the next matchup was Hernandez versus Matt Morgan in another quarterfinals match in the 8-card stud tournament. And this match actually wasn't looking forward to it that much, but I would say up until the ending, this was actually a pretty good match. It's actually a little better than I was expecting. Actually pretty enjoyable. But the ending kind of killed the overall quality of the match. Now, at the ending of this match, you saw Hernandez out of the ring and looked like Matt Morgan was going to win this match via a count out. Then Matt Morgan stopped that, got Hernandez into the ring, threw him into one of the corners, then rolled him up and hooked the tights. So Matt Morgan wins that way, and I would say a 1 3/4 star match, because before the ending, they actually did some pretty enjoyable stuff. And they'll probably explain this on Impact instead of saying, breaking the team up quite yet. They'll probably just say, Matt Morgan will probably just explain this, saying that I did this just because, this a world title shot was on the line here, and, everyone for themselves by any means necessary. And that's pretty much going to be the way that he'll probably explain it on Impact, because I don't see them breaking up the team quite yet, even though they kind of need to break up the team and get the titles off of them and just give them to a real team. Give them to either the Motor City Machine Guns or Generation Me, because them two against each other would have an excellent tag team feud. And I'm just sick and tired of TNA just giving the tag titles to more or less just thrown together teams. Even the British Invasion are pretty much a thrown together team, but at least they have the look of being a tag team. Matt Morgan and Hernandez, just nothing more than a thrown together team. And then the next matchup was the third quarterfinals match. This was Mr. Anderson versus Kurt Angle. And this match I was actually looking forward to, because I thought these two could put on a very good match against each other. Now, the ending of this match was not booked very good. Not only the ending was poorly booked in this match, I think the wrong person went over in this match. At one point in this match, you saw Mr. Anderson, you saw him get Kurt Angle's medal and bust Kurt Angle open with that. So Kurt Angle was bleeding a lot during this match. And then the end of the match, you saw at one point, you saw Mr. Anderson go to one corner, try to take off the top turnbuckle cover. Then the referee saw him do that. The referee was on one side while not looking, trying to put the turnbuckle pad back on at that corner. Then Mr. Anderson went to the other side, took that turnbuckle pad off, and then at the end of the match saw Kurt Angle get slammed into that. Then Mr. Anderson hit the mic check for the victory to advance to the semifinals. And I would say about a 2-star match. Wasn't a terrible match, but I think it could have been a better match than what it was, and I think the wrong person advanced in the match. I think it would have been smart for TNA to have Kurt Angle in the finals of this tournament, because I think Kurt Angle could have really put over the winner of this match, the winner of this tournament, very good. And not only that, it would have been a great match if he was actually in the finals and advanced that far. Then the next matchup was the last of the quarterfinals matches. This was Abyss versus Mick Foley. Before the match, they were backstage with Bischoff. Bischoff said if there's any shenanigans involved in this match, Abyss will have to lose his mask this coming Thursday on Impact. Then handed Mick Foley and Abyss the barbed wire bat and said, neither one of you involve this in the match or hit each other with it. Abyss will be taking off his mask this Thursday on Impact. Now, a lot of this match, I would say, unfortunately, it was a no disqualification match, but a lot of it was booked as a complete joke. I really hate what they're doing with Abyss's character. I mean, his character, I would say, has pretty much been dead for a long time, but now they're even making his character worse than what it is. I mean, Abyss should be booked as a unstoppable force, a monster heel that just wants to completely destroy everyone. He shouldn't be sympathetic towards Mick Foley or have, an emotional side to him. That type of thing, WWF and WWE tried that with Kane, having him be this, have this giant, have this emotional side, and see what that did with Kane's character, and is doing pretty much the same thing with Abyss's character, even killing the character more than what it actually has already been killed. And the end of the match saw Abyss hit the black hole slam to Mick Foley through a number of thumbtacks, and that was the end of the match. Now, it was an interesting note during this match, neither one actually hit each other with the barbed wire baseball bat. Mick Foley tried to get involved, but didn't get involved in the match. So hopefully they don't do something stupid and have Abyss take off his mask this Thursday on Impact, because not only will that be that would be the death of the character and death of the Abyss character, and it'd be stupid for them to do that. Hopefully they don't do that with the ending of him taking him through the thumbtacks. Hopefully they just don't go any further with that and just don't even think about taking the mask off. That would be stupid to do that. Then in that match, I would give that about 1.5 stars. It wasn't a terrible match, but at best decent, I would say. With most of the match being a complete joke. But the next matchup was the match no one was looking forward to. This was the Nasty Boys versus Team 3D. Now, I gotta admit, before the ending of this match, I was actually kind of enjoying this match. It wasn't anything spectacular or anything great. It was actually a decent match between these two. Like most people probably expected, this match was pretty much them just brawling with each other, pretty much just a brawl. That was pretty much the way this match was pretty much booked for the most part. The end of the match comes when Team 3D hits the 3D onto Jerry Sags. Then out of nowhere, out of camera view, you see Jimmy Hart hand Brian Knobbs a helmet. And then Brian Knobbs breaks up the pinfall from Devon pinning Jerry Sags. And that's the end of the match. They win the match via just hitting Devon with a helmet and Jerry Sags pinning Devon in the match. So not only the Nasties win this match, but now they have Jimmy Hart with them. So unfortunately, we haven't seen the last of the Nasty Boys. I would say this match, I would give it a 1 star, 1 star at best. I'm not going to go as far as saying it was one of the worst matches of all time or worst matches of the year, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing something worse than this year. It wasn't that bad of a match, but should have been something that at best should have been on Impact, not on a pay-per-view that people have to spend their money to actually see. Should have been just something done on Impact, not pay-per-view. And Team 3D should have went over instead of the Nasty Boys, because it's pointless having them go over. Then the next matchup was the first semifinals match in the 8-card stud tournament. This was the Pope DAngelo Dinero versus Matt Morgan. And this match was actually going along pretty good. Pretty decent stuff between these two. Nothing great, but pretty decent. But the ending just came out of nowhere. At one point in this match, Matt Morgan just went for the big boot, got caught up in the ropes. Then out of nowhere, you saw the Pope DAngelo Dinero hit the DDE, the DAngelo Dinero Express, to Matt Morgan for the victory in a 1.5 star match. Wasn't that good at all, and just the ending came out of nowhere. And fairly short match considering it was a semifinals match. You would expect, the semifinals matches to get a little longer, a little more time than the actual, first round matches did. Then the next matchup was the second of the semifinals matches, Abyss versus Mr. Anderson. And within this match, Mr. Anderson picks up the victory after hitting the mic check to Abyss. So 2 months in a row, Mr. Anderson goes over Abyss, wins this match 1.5 stars. Both semifinals matches were nothing to write home about, nothing that good at all. It was good to see the Pope advance all the way to the finals, and he actually, I'll talk about that in a second. The one thing that I disliked was after this, instead of having the finals of the tournament, the 8-card stud tournament, you actually had the world title match. So the world title match wasn't the main event of this pay-per-view. Now, I know they were focusing on the 8-card stud tournament a lot on this pay-per-view, and that was pretty much the main thing of this pay-per-view. I think they did the wrong move of not having the world title in the main event. The world title should almost all the time be in the main event, whereas unless you got something like, like a lockdown style War Games type match or something that makes sense of not having the world title in the main event. I don't think the finals of an 8-card stud tournament makes sense not having the world title in the main event. But the world title match was Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles with special guest referee Eric Bischoff at the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And this match was really good. I enjoyed the stuff them two did. Really never seen a bad match with Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles. Even Eric Bischoff's involvement, I would say, didn't hurt the quality of the match. Now, he did have a big thing to do with the outcome of the match, but I don't think it hurt the match. I think what they could have done with Eric Bischoff and knowing Hogan and knowing Bischoff, the ending could have been even overbooked more than what it was, and I don't think it was even overbooked. I think it somewhat made sense, the ending, for a change, with Eric Bischoff having to be involved in it. Now, the end of the match, near the end of the match, you saw Samoa Joe hit the Muscle Buster on AJ Styles, and then Ric Flair pulls Eric Bischoff out the ring, then them two argue and bicker back and forth with each other. Eric Bischoff knocks out Ric Flair. Then he's pretty much out there celebrating, knocking out Ric Flair. Then Eric Bischoff gets pulled in the ring by Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe's arguing with him. Then from behind, you see AJ Styles hit the Pele kick to Samoa Joe, then gets him into the Styles Clash. And then Eric Bischoff actually counts the 1, 2, 3 very slowly, but he does count the 1, 2, 3 for AJ Styles to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. Like I said, Eric Bischoff's involvement, I would say, didn't hurt the quality of the match. I still thought it was a good match between AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. You've seen better matches from them two before. If you want to see an actual, excellent, great match between those two, check out their exhibition title matches they had against each other back in 2005. But I still thought this was a good world title match. And this world title match right here, and I would say the opening of this pay-per-view, kind of helped this pay-per-view from falling into the realm of being lower than a 6 for this pay-per-view. And then the main event was the finals of the 8-card stud tournament. But before that, you saw Mr. Anderson with a backstage promo. Then you saw Pope D'Angelo and Dinero do a backstage promo. Then you saw Sean Waltman and Scott Hall attack the Pope D'Angelo and Dinero. Then his music hits. At first, he doesn't come to the ring. Then Mr. Anderson's music hits. He comes to the ring, tells the ref to ring the bell and just count Pope D'Angelo and Dinero out. He comes crawling towards the ring. Then pretty much the first 4 or 5 minutes of this match was nothing more than Mr. Anderson attacking the Pope D'Angelo and Dinero and going back and forth from attacking him to going back in the ring, stopping the 10 count so he wouldn't get counted out. And that was pretty much the way the first portion of this match was booked. Then the end of the match saw, at one point you saw the Pope D'Angelo and Dinero, you saw him, the mic check get put on him by Mr. Anderson in this match. The crowd was thinking that Mr. Anderson was going to go over. He actually kicked out. Then the end of the match saw the Pope D'Angelo and Dinero hit the DDE, the D'Angelo Dinero Express, to win the 8-card stud tournament and advance on to take on AJ Styles at the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view. The crowd erupted when he won, and it's great to see that TNA, had the Pope go over here and, actually listening to the fans and actually going with who the fans like. And it's glad to see that the Pope D'Angelo Dinero is getting a world title shot. Might be a little too quick for his character to be getting a world title shot, but I like it because I think he's one of those guys that when he worked with WWE, he really never got his just due. He never got booked the way he should have, and definitely glad that TNA is actually utilizing him because I think he's one of those types of guys that's so charismatic. He's good in the ring. He has a good look, and definitely is one of those guys that TNA could kind of say to WWE, we made this guy into actually a big star in our company, like they did with Christian. I think they could do the same thing with Elijah Burke, a.k.a. the Pope D'Angelo Dinero. Like I said, with the main event, I would give that 2 stars. It wasn't a bad match, nothing really terrible. Glad the Pope D'Angelo Dinero went over. If Mr. Henderson went over, this would have just been a terrible way the pay-per-view ended. And made sense, I guess, kind of having that as the main event a little bit because they wanted to send the crowd home happy with the Pope D'Angelo Dinero going over in the main event. And I would give that match like I said, 2 stars. Overall, I'll give the pay-per-view a 6 out of 10 because I did enjoy the world title match. Thought it was a very good world title match, even with Bischoff's involvement. The opening match with Desmond Wolfe versus the Pope D'Angelo Dinero was very good. If you check the matches out on this pay-per-view, those are the only matches that I would recommend for you to check out on this pay-per-view. And the Pope D'Angelo Dinero going over in the 8-card stud tournament and winning that, I enjoyed that and glad that they're actually really pushing him very hard, and can't wait to see his match with AJ Styles at the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view. Like I said, give this pay-per-view a 6 out of 10, and yeah, that's it for my TNA Against All Odds 2010 pay-per-view review. Peace. The main things that hurt this pay-per-view were, obviously the tournament could have been booked better, but I would say the main things that you saw wrong with this pay-per-view were almost all the matches other than the opening match. You either saw end in endings that came out of nowhere or a poorly booked ending. Those are the ways that every single match other than one match on this pay-per-view ended in. Now, overall, I'm giving this pay-per-view a 6 out of 10 like you see in my description. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking that might be a little too generous for this pay-per-view. Now, the main reason why I'll explain why I'm giving this pay-per-view a 6 out of 10 is because I did enjoy the world title match. I enjoyed the opening quarterfinals match with Desmond Wolfe versus the Pope D'Angelo Dinero, and the outcome with the Pope D'Angelo Dinero winning the 8-card stud tournament was good enough to kind of help this pay-per-view. You at least saw some things come out of this pay-per-view, so you're going to see, well, actually, before I get into the overall review of this pay-per-view, a lot of you know that today TNA is making a major announcement about probably, by the time you see this video, probably less than an hour, they'll be making the announcement. And the major announcement at this time is rumored that TNA is going to be moving to Monday nights. And if that's the major announcement that TNA is moving to Monday nights, I'll give my thoughts on that tomorrow because don't want to upload. This is my TNA Against All Odds 2010 pay-per-view review. The pay-per-view aired last night live exclusively on pay-per-view. What I got to say about this TNA pay-per-view is this pay-per-view was nothing more than one of those TNA throwaway pay-per-views, or at best a TNA, average pay-per-view, an average TNA pay-per-view. Nothing really spectacular on this pay-per-view, which most people I don't think were expecting much from this pay-per-view. And I think the one thing that kind of hurt this pay-per-view was the Pope DAngelo Dinero take on AJ Styles, the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view, which should be a great match between those two at TNA Lockdown. Like I said, the opening match was good, and the world title match on this pay-per-view was good, even with Eric Bischoff's involvement. Didn't hurt the quality of the match at all. I thought them two still put on a hell of a world title match. Them two put on better matches before in the past, but I thought it was still a very good world title match. The opening matchup was